Hey guys, it's Lainey here with Steel Strength Training. I'm the nutrition specialist here at Steel, and I'm really excited about today's topic because it is on bread. What's the healthiest option? Kind of where do we go in terms of choosing different options? So let's go ahead and get into it. So first I want to talk about the general different types of bread. There's a lot of different types, but the main ones that I'll be talking about today is white bread, sourdough, and whole wheat. Those are the three categories we're going to discuss and kind of the pros and cons of each one. So let's start with white bread. White bread is a simple carbohydrate. It gets a lot of hate, and that's because when you eat a piece of white bread, especially from the grocery store, your blood sugar spikes. It's also a simple carb, so you're going to burn through it super fast. There's normally sugars, especially in store-bought white bread. And so, in my opinion, there's white bread that you make yourself with like normal commercial made yeast. And then there's store-bought bread that has oils in it, that has preservatives in it. So if I make normal white bread, let's say hamburger buns at home, they will last about 2 days before they start getting hard if I leave them not in the freezer, okay? But if I get a store-bought bread that's white or even wheat, it can last way past the expiration date, and it's not hard at all, and there's no mold on it. So that kind of goes to show you how much preservatives they put in it, how many additives they have. There's a huge list. Okay, so then we have whole wheat bread. Whole wheat definitely gets a better rap because of the nutrient content. The micronutrients that it has in there is present in whole wheat bread more, and so enriched grains, which is what you see in white bread, they have to manually add in the micronutrients so that people who only eat white bread are not deficient in those certain minerals that are mostly in grains. So that's not great. We want it to be in natural sources to get those vitamins, and so whole wheat offers that because it naturally has riboflavin, things like that in it, because it uses the entire wheat kernel instead of white bread, which is only the endosperm that's used to grind up and make the bread. So the endosperm is what is white bread's made out of, and it doesn't have all the natural minerals and nutrients in it, versus wheat bread has the entire wheat kernel, which is where all the fiber and all the micronutrients are in. So with wheat bread, you're going to get more fiber, you're going to get more nutrients naturally, but however, there's good wheat bread and there's bad wheat bread, sadly, and that's because of the commercial brands in the grocery store. They're going to have a ton of additives, kind of like white bread, with oils, different things that's just adding calories. There's even sugar in wheat bread. So if you're going to do a store-bought wheat bread and you're not going to make it yourself, I would definitely recommend doing the Ezekiel bread, because that's sprouted grain and it's a lot easier to digest. It's a complete protein with protein and nutrients and fiber in it. So it's going to be easier to digest. The ingredients are, I'm pretty sure they're organic, very minimal, and you can understand all the ingredients, okay? So that's the goal. When you're looking for bread, you should be able to read and understand all the ingredients. It should all be wheat-related things that is in your bread. Otherwise, they're just adding it because it's cheaper and it's going to last longer, which is not good for our digestion or gut microbiome. So now let's get into the third category, which is my personal favorite, which is sourdough bread. So sourdough bread has gotten a lot popular recently, and that's because people have realized the beauty of it, and it's pretty easy to make in terms of making it at home. But let's kind of talk about why people think it's better than other types of bread, and that's because there's this thing called phytate or phytic acid, and that is present in most types of bread. It's a natural compound that's in most like grain things, and it's not inherently unhealthy, but the problem with it is that it blocks certain minerals and nutrients that we need to absorb. So with that being said, with things like wheat and white bread, phthalates are in it, and so you can't absorb all the nutrients that we need and get from those foods because of the phthalate in it. So a lot of people say that sourdough is better and that you can absorb all your nutrients because whenever there was something I listened to, they did a study on sourdough versus whole wheat bread, and sourdough bread had 90% of phthalate removed from its compound versus whole wheat bread had 40% removed, I believe. So a lot less is present in sourdough than in other types of bread because of the natural fermentation process. So the cool thing about sourdough, and this is why I love it, it's very affordable to make. It's more the time that it takes that people don't love. So I make sourdough at home. It takes about 2 days for the fermentation process, and that's because this is what makes sourdough good for you, is because it's not made up of commercial yeast, it's made up of wild yeast. So the sourdough is basically just made up of white flour or whatever flour you choose and water, but the starter is, if you make it yourself or you have starter from someone else, it contains wild yeast that was fed and taken care of so that it can grow in that environment. And wild yeast is way more beneficial for our bodies than normal commercial yeast that rises super quickly. So it takes a while to grow. That's why it takes a while to make sourdough. But with sourdough, you get prebiotics, probiotics in there, not because you add it in there, but because the wild yeast naturally has it in there, which basically prebiotics and probiotics, that's what you want in your gut microbiome, and it is going to be good bacteria in there that we need in our gut, and that's what makes it healthy and be able to digest well. The problem with store-bought sourdough is because lots of commercial brands at normal grocery stores, they're taking lots of shortcuts in sourdough making. So when I try sourdough at the store, I'm like, is this really sourdough? Because it doesn't have that strong sour taste. And that's because they're taking shortcuts, whether they're shortening the duration of bulk fermentation, or they're just adding in discard instead of an entire true fermented loaf. So that's kind of where that comes in, is that store-bought sourdough is not completely fermented. A lot of times they take shortcuts to make things cheaper and to get their product out faster. And then that's when you run into all the problems of not having your bread completely fermented, and all the benefits of sourdough are kind of diminished or not really present at all. So I, number one, recommend making your own sourdough, getting into it on your own, which I'm going to create. I'm really excited. I'm creating a reel on how I make my sourdough. I actually sell my sourdough loaves and kind of how that process goes, so that you guys, I want to empower you guys to be able to do that, or at least to buy it from somewhere like, if you live in the Birmingham area, Continental Bakery or local bakeries who are doing it right. Make sure you know what's in your bread. Ask for the ingredients. They should be able to give it to you. But yes, if you don't want to make it yourself or you don't have time, there are simple recipes, but there are local bakeries that make sourdough, as well as maybe someone you know can make it for you. So that would be my number one, probably the number one healthiest thing would be whole wheat sourdough combo. But I think if you're looking for more of a high fiber bread, go with whole wheat. But if you're looking for something that's going to keep your blood sugar low, that's going to be easy to digest, if you're gluten sensitive, sourdough is good because it actually lowers the gluten in the bread. So for example, I have a couple friends who are gluten free, and I am able to actually make them sourdough and they can eat the sourdough. So that doesn't mean it's gluten-free, but people who are gluten sensitive can often have sourdough because they're not completely gluten intolerant or have an allergy. But people with celiac should not have sourdough. So that's why it's a little easier to digest, is because of the less gluten present in sourdough bread. But yes, Ezekiel bread is great for people who want to do a store-bought bread. There are ones there, especially at Whole Foods, Sprouts, things like that. But do your research, look for minimal ingredients, look for things that are natural and real bread. And I just have such a passion for this topic, and I think a lot of people are like, oh, bread is so bad for you, you shouldn't eat bread if you're trying to lose weight. And that I just don't think has to be true. Yes, you shouldn't have your entire meal be bread or eat 4 pieces of bread a day, but there's such good ways to eat bread, and it's something that God gave us to be able to enjoy. And I think bread making is a skill, and it benefits your family so much and your friends around you. So if you are interested in getting into the bread making realm, please do it. Don't hesitate, because it is super rewarding. And I just think with a lot of the issues with gluten-free, gluten-sensitive things, is not because it's bread alone. I think it's the way that America and the world has began to process bread, and a lot of that starts with flour, but a lot of it also starts with the bread that we buy at the grocery store. So I want us to look out for those grain products, because a lot of the grain things I see in the grocery store are some of the most processed things on the shelves, and I don't want y'all eating that, and I don't want to eat it either. So let's be educated. Let's know what to look for in our bread, whether we're making it or buying it. There's ways to do it well. So comment below any questions that you have with bread. If you want to know my recipe, follow the Instagram for Steel Strength Training. The reel will be posted there, and there'll be kind of a tutorial on that. But I hope y'all enjoyed this topic. I know I did, and I hope to see y'all baking soon.